All right, this is a special meeting of the Board of Trustees for Nevada Unified School District. We did meet in closed session this evening, and just for the record, before we make the announcements, I recused myself from one item in closed session. That was item 3B. And Trustee Aguila, if you could report out the closed session items, please.
Yes, the first item that we discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54954.5B, conference with real property negotiators, property parcel 1B, C Street, agency negotiator, Yancy Hawkins, negotiating parties, North Bay Children's Center, under negotiations, price, and terms. And we gave direction. The second item we discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54957 and 549.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so a first by Trustee Millerick, a second by Trustee Nell to approve our agenda. All those in favor? 7-0. All right, moving on to consent. Are there any items from the board to pull from consent? There's just a handful. There's not a whole lot, but all right. Seeing none, I need a motion to approve. Okay. First by Trustee Millerick, a second by Trustee Nell. All those in favor to approve our consent agenda? 7-0. Right. Announcements from the board. Trustee Millerick, do you have any announcements?
I have no announcements this evening.
All right. Trustee Nell. Trustee Gasson.
Two real quick ones. Yesterday I attended a special ed committee meeting, and I want to say thank you to Kelly Johnson for putting this together this year, and it was great. Catherine Naum and Amy Carter were there as well, so it was very helpful that we were working on some collaboration, so I'm hoping that can continue next year. And last night I was also in attendance at Not in Our Town, Novato, and if anyone else on the board is interested, I attended as an individual. The next general meeting is July 8th. Here from 5:30 to 7 p.m.
All right, Trustee Mack.
Very quick. I went to a restorative justice luncheon at San Marin High School with the team there, and it was good to meet all the individuals who are doing it. They're doing a great job because it's good for the kids that are involved in it as well as the kids who are put into it. I think everybody gets a lot of good experience out of it. It's good for us, and looking forward to us expanding it or getting it going like it is at San Marin at Novato as well.
Great. Thank you for attending that. Appreciate
Sure.
that. Trustee Cooper? No. Okay. Trustee Aguila?
Yeah, I just attended San Marin High School, just went and visit and spoke to teachers and students, and so that was always a good visit. Also attended our meeting with the Golden Bell Committee, and we just had feedback about the event that we had, and moving forward, and everybody was very happy. And again, I'd like to thank our superintendent again for being the MC. And after that, so that's about it, I think.
All right. It's a busy time of year. I was able to get out to the Novato High Senior Awards night. So another great evening, and students receiving their scholarships that they've worked hard to get. So also the North Marin Council meeting wrapped up their year, and I attended their last meeting. And that was about it. Superintendent Huggamo, do you have anything? No. All right. Thank you. All right. Non-agenda public comment. I cards here for anybody to speak. Our audience is pretty slim, so we're going to move on to our presentation. We have Novato Community TV here this evening. Welcome. We all got a copy of your presentation here, so we're good to go when you're ready.
Well, thank you very much for having NCTV here. I don't believe I've ever spoken to you before, and tonight is really all about informing you what NCTV is, where we exist, and what we do, and the fact that we do exist for a lot of people that still don't know. And so, first want to start off with who we are. NCTV, Novato Community Television, is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Our founding partners are the City of Novato and Novato Unified School District. I've been in this role as executive director for 7.5 years. Before that, I was on the NCTV Board of Directors for 5 years. I volunteered as a producer since 2002. We incorporated in 2001, so this has pretty much been the significant portion of my career. And prior to that, I have a broadcasting degree from San Francisco State. So I feel right at home here, and I just want to say sincerely, we truly do appreciate the space that you have allowed us to have over these 18 years, and it's been a pleasure working with most of you all that time. The vast majority of our funding is from Comcast cable subscribers. As you probably well know, that funding will likely go down as there are cord cutters out there and not watching TV, unlike me. And a few other people here. We still watch television, so we're not giving up that hope yet, but that does seem to be the trend that our dollars are dwindling a bit. NCTV provides non-promotional or non-commercial programming on 3 channels, channel 26, 27, and 30. And I actually will go back to that slide. I didn't realize you took control there. Thank goodness I brought him along. Nevada's mission is to empower local voices to create, inform, and entertain through the use of innovative media, because we see ourselves in the future moving to being more of a media center than just a television station. So again, we provide programming on Channel 26, which is the public access station. Anybody can come in, become a member, and we'll teach you how to film, edit, do your own public service announcement, voiceover training. Channel 27 is the government channel, so simultaneously tonight with your meeting, there's also a city council meeting that we're airing. And we do other things for them as well. And then, of course, right now, like I said, we're live doing all of your school board meetings and special meetings. So I guess that's my cue then. Since the picture says 1,000 words, we thought we'd just show you this video so that you could see what it is that we do.
Attendance is up this year. We have over 500 riders. It's a great time for our families, our kids, the community to come together.
The teachers who inspire. Let's hear a round of applause.
So we wanted to test what we've been working on for several years now, which is the Alert Marin system to notify our communities if we had a fast-moving wildfire.
My hope is for my students to be able to make connections for their future.
We introduced wellness in the schools, and that's a culinary education class where we actually go into a school and provide culinary education classes to all the students. I may be leaving, but you're staying, and if I can leave you with one thought, it's this, is that be well and help others be well. Thank you.
You may recognize a few people in that video. The Fuel Tour event was just outstanding. I mean, we lucked out with great weather, but everything else pulled together. It was just really a pleasure to be out there and witness that and capture that for you. So in addition to the meetings and teaching people how to do their own videos and us being out in the community, we also do other things for NUSD, and all of this here is pro bono that you're seeing come up. So we do a lot of Game of the Week. In fact, this Friday we've been asked to videotape San Marin High's graduation, so we'll be there for that. We don't charge for any of those services, but to put it in perspective, if we did charge, it would cost the studio about $15,000 to do just those videos there, and that's a very conservative estimate. If you were to hire a videographer to do that, a freelancer, it'd be more around $30,000, and again, that's being very conservative. We've come a long way over the past, 5 years especially. We now have a very full board. We have 8 board members, and the board is recruiting a 9th member. So that could be maybe one of you. We're looking to get someone who maybe has human resources experience or an attorney, a paralegal, just to really round out what we are grateful to have already. And then staffing, this is, if you know from a few years ago, I was the lone soldier in the studio for quite a while. So now I have all this support here, but they are very, very part-time. But I don't know how I could have done that. I just couldn't do this job without all that support. And look what, I'm going to have my tech support here tonight. So what does the future hold for NCTV? I mean, we're doing well now, but now what? There's no clear-cut answers to that, but we definitely are starting to create partnerships. In fact, we just recently created a partnership with College of Marin that came together rather smoothly and easily, and with some assistance from some board members here. In fact, 2 of the interns on the end there, they helped out with the Novato Festival of Art, Wine, and Music this weekend. And so we couldn't have done it without their help. And then Mitch in the red sweatshirt, he's a former intern who came back, and he's now a seasonal employee this year. We are persevering cautiously and optimistically, but we are doing more outreach. We want to increase our revenue, of course, and then additional revenue would enable us, hopefully, to have more full-time staff and definitely purchase new equipment. Our equipment is at least 7.5 years old or more. By upgrading the playback equipment to do these meetings, you would see it would be advantageous for NUSD. And I won't go into detail, but it would, even though we're still on the lower scale, the 26, 27, 30 range, we would look more like we are the high definition 700 range, and we could do fly-ins, we could update things on TV for you. It would just be really outstanding, and would streamline the work for the staff as well. So in addition, we've established that internship program with College of Marin, and we are continuing to search for additional revenue sources. But we aren't out of the woods yet. We do have this gray cloud over us once again, another gray cloud, that the FCC is looking to defund us. And you probably may know something about that, but if not, I think it's best said with this video right here.
The move comes 4 days after Regrets face comments that provoked a firestorm.
In an era of media consolidation and globalization, the PEG channels root our media in local communities, in local voices, and that is absolutely indispensable.
A lot of people are able to get job training, information, just from using public access.
This is about the arts. This is about accessibility. This is about transparency.
PEG stations give viewers critical information about their communities and offer an important platform for local residents.
We're talking about supporting causes, charities, education, youth, seniors, democracy.
This is not a left issue. This is not a right issue. This is an everybody issue.
If you care about protecting local community access television, raise your voices.
We are about and for the community, and so this is looming over this and could happen, whatever it could be, in the next few months. So we obviously are posturing ourselves for anything and everything. But it means so much to me that we inspire the community. In fact, a real quick story is that 3 years ago I had, we host and produce a local show called In Novato, and I was at the farmer's market, and some little girl came up to me, she was probably 9 at that time, and I handed her the mic and said, "Would you like to help co-host this with me?" She was so excited. 3 years later, I bumped into her father at the store, and I said, how's she doing? He said, "Oh my gosh, she cannot stop asking about you, asking about NCTV, and she's looking into going into broadcasting for her career." So we do inspire, we do make an imprint in the community, and a lasting impression, obviously. So with that, I want to turn it over to my board treasurer, Corey Cameron of CCK, and she's going to fill in with some financial updates.
on? Is this the microphone I'm talking into? Okay. Good evening. I'm Corey Cameron, and I've been working with Novato Community Television regularly with Pam since November of last year. And just recently, last month, I was voted onto the board to serve as its treasurer. And Pam's passion is addicting. I really love the station, and I'm also passionate about making things work with this. I'm here to provide you tonight with an overview of the revenue sources and propose ways that Novato Unified School District can help Novato Community Television to get more exposure in the community. NCTV receives most of its revenue, 93%, from PEG fees, and PEG stands for Public, Educational, and Government. A cable operator may be required to provide channels for public, education, and government access, and the funds are provided to local studios for equipment to operate these channels. PEG fees are charged to cable customers as an automatic fee on their cable bill, and as more and more people are leaving cable and turning to other sources of media, these sources of revenue are threatened. Only 7% of our revenue actually comes from the services that we provide, our membership dues, and donations, and just over 4% of the total revenue is actually from the services that we provide. That means that 4% of our revenue comes from films, television shows, studio time to make those shows, and other related station publications. Membership revenue is less than 1%. Because we receive in-kind payments for the services that we provide, we've been able to sustain Novato's local station. However, these in-kind trades for services are dwindling. Therefore, we're asking for help. We want to be your partners, and if NUSD begins charging NCTV rent, the station will be put into a position of not only paying for the space that we occupy, but also paying for the services that we have provided to the school district for years at no charge. We're not a commercial television station. We can't sell advertisements. We can't charge thousands of dollars for our professional services and our team to fill local public, educational, and government events. If we were independent, then we can do that, but we're not. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We work for our schools, we work for our government, and we work for our community to make it a better, more locally educated place. Now that you've met our team and you know how dedicated and passionate they are about our station, they are instrumental in keeping the station meaningful and keeping it relevant. We need to drive more awareness to NCTV by improving our membership, exposing what we do for our community, and letting our neighbors know who we are, what we do, and why we're here. We would love to be included in Friday folders, for example, or other outreach efforts to the parents of the students in our school districts. We offer internships, education, experiential learning, and we're thinking of new ideas every day to improve our product. Imagine if we could educate Novato's parents about our small but mighty local television station. It would make a difference, and making a difference in our community is of paramount importance to us. I sincerely appreciate your time tonight. Thank you very much.
All right. Come on up. Board members, questions? Trustee Millerick and then Trustee Aguila.
Thank you, President Butler. I would like to just recap some of the history that got us into, I think, what we're now having a conversation about how this partnership works. When Chambers Cable first put cables in the ground in Novato all over, there was a telecommunications committee formed by the City of Novato because they're the governing board for cable TV local, and there was always contention between local control and state level control, and large organizations like Comcast and AT&T and PacBell liked state level control because they only had to deal with one agency, and if they could buy off a legislator in Sacramento, it didn't matter what the local agencies want. In this case, the cable TV program that was laws by the federal government required they deal with the local agencies. And so the Novato School District put Jan Langtree, Connie Benz, Sharon Taylor, and Ross Millerick on the Public Access Steering Committee for the school, run by the city. And on that same committee was an equal part of city employees and others. And with that strong participation by the school, we were able to argue that there should be a public access TV program. It should include public education and government. And in order to be at the table, there was a back room in this building that was just full of textbooks, for the most part, that were over 5 years old. They were using it as a warehouse. And the school district stepped forward and said, as our contribution, the city will commit its PEG funds to the successful operation. As our contribution to this program, the school district will put forth a physical plant and allow the PEG to operate at no cost out of this building. And Joel Montero was the superintendent at the time, and the board at that time agreed. And so the partnership that was established, and I'm guessing 93, something like that, went forward, and then Comcast purchased Chambers Cable, and now we're part of the Chambers organization. And none of this has to do with the facilities we share up at San Marin campus. That was a completely separate deal. This is public access. And it also allowed for the placement of a fiber cable between here and the San Rafael Public Access Studio. So College of Marin was piping up courses to this studio, which were then broadcast locally, so Nevada citizens could take College of Marin courses online. And it's been successful. And our contribution and all that was the physical plant. So it wasn't like we put money at the table, but we got 2 board seats, and we got the coverage for this meeting at some reduced rate. I'm not sure the current circumstances, but it was a fair deal. And recently, I know this board has passed a budget proposal that includes putting a rental fee on the public access studio, and I supported that at the time. And I think maybe that was a mistake on my part. I'm not sure where the board's going to land, but I think that partnership that we established a long time ago still has legs and still ought to be honored. I do think it's time to do some renewal of what does it mean to be a public access studio. Everybody carries a cell phone. The tools and techniques are changing. It's time to renew the platform. But I think it's also time for the school district to continue to participate. So I would like us to think about finding a replacement savings instead of looking to the public access studio. So there's my 2 cents in my history. I hope that's helpful to the rest of you as you think about this.
Thank you. Trustee Gila?
Yeah. Thank you very much for being here tonight. Learned some new stuff. I didn't know you had some of the services that you provided, and just wanted to also add that being an animal lover that I am, and I know that you are, some of the things that you do too that is not included in here is every member of the community is able to, if they lose a dog or if they want to adopt an animal or something, you also provide that service. And so I notice that that's not in here. But just wanted to say thank you for all the hard work making it possible for our meetings to be televised. And, you guys are always out there in the corner, and, there's a lot to complain, but you guys just, do your job and hang in there. And I just wanted to I think that we're very lucky to have you guys here and be able to help us be transparent with our community. So thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Trustee Gasson.
So, hi, thank you. And actually, had a clarification or on your revenue and expenses, the $4,800 NUSD income. What is it that we do?
That was part of our original partnership agreement with that. It would pay for a staff person to run the meetings. Shannon's back there right now. So it's just generally, it's exclusively for his staff time.
Okay, so that's the portion that we pay.
We pay NCTV $4,800 a year.
Okay.
To do our meetings here.
And then what is the amount? Does anyone remember what we?
It's 1,000, I think.
Per month?
Increase.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
1,000. I can't remember. 1,000 a month.
We can, Ross, your suggestion, we have the budget conversation up in a couple items, and that's where it fits, so. Okay, anybody else? Trustee Nell, did you? Yeah, okay, Trustee Nell.
I just want to thank you guys. I think you're a valuable resource. I support your the program, and maybe we can work out something that's that helps us both. We're both in a financial hardship situation. It's regrettable for sure, but I just think it's the work that you're doing, and you're talking about evolving into something else, and I certainly don't see why. I'm sure you've done a lot of research, but I don't see why the PEG fees shouldn't be continue to come your way. It's an exchange. In order for an organization like Comcast to have a monopoly in providing a franchise service, there ought to be a trade-off. They ought to be expected and obligated to make a commitment to the communities that they serve with their monopoly. So I think it's regrettable that the FCC regulators are considering this, and I certainly would be willing to log on and be a voice against that type of thing, because I think your service is very valuable, and the information that you put out, and the fact that anyone who wants to publish their speech is the kind of thing that we don't want to undercut in any way. So. Good job, keep it up, and I look forward to working with you guys.
Debbie, do we want to consider as a board writing a position letter to the FCC?
Okay, sure. Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Do you? Yeah, is there a resolution? Or?
I have a copy of a letter that the city of Novato wrote, and so basically you can use that as a template.
Okay. Is there a consensus from the board to support that? Okay. Superintendent Hogaboom will take the lead on that and work with you to get that. You do want that from us, correct?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Just want to make sure. All right. Well, thank you very much. I can't add too much more. We appreciate you presenting this evening to us, and thank you, Corey, as well, for... Yes.
The small town democracy pitch. There are, the model of this whole country was, if you didn't like what happened, you lived in Massachusetts, you walked downtown and complained to your local council member as they were convening around the campfire and the sailing ships. That model of local participation, where I don't like what I see, I'm going to put my slippers on and go down and tell the city council, or go down and tell the school board, is driven by the ability to see what's going on, the visibility of the enterprise. And the part of Novato that reflects that ethic of small town democracy, if it was Gail Meyer or me or anybody with a voice who didn't like, or Betty Machado who didn't like what they saw, had a voice to be able to get their voice heard and see if people agreed with it or not, I think is a very, very important part of the American tradition, and I'm glad it happens in Novato.
Well, the two students that helped us for Art and Wine, they came, that was their first day working on Saturday. They got their media pass. I've never had a media pass before. They were so excited, and they worked almost all day long with appropriate breaks, of course. But they were just so excited to be a part of that. And they learned so much about the event. They met people. It was really a growth opportunity for them. And this is an excellent forum for anybody to come in and express your opinion or anything that you're passionate about. So we're here for you.
Thank you.
And bye, Jim Hogaboom. It's been so wonderful working with you. I don't know when you're transitioning out, but please know that we truly are going to miss you, and it's been a real pleasure working with you. Thanks. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Moving on to our staff reports. Youth Truth Survey. We have Leslie Benjamin here this evening. Give us an update.
Do you need it moved? Okay. There we go. Well, now you can see all the great information that's coming your way. So I'm here tonight to give you an update or the results of the second year of our Youth Truth Survey. Thank you to the Marin Community Foundation and the Haas Family Fund for funding that for the past 2 years. The MCF Marin Community Foundation has funded our elementary schools, and the Haas Foundation has done our secondary schools, which has really allowed us to see everything K-12. How am I going to do this? Okay, there we go. So I have included in the presentation the link and the login to look at the information and all the data yourself. If you ever have questions on how to look at anything, please let me know. This is also available to the public, so if they wanted to go and look and dive into this themselves, they certainly can. The information, oh my gosh, there is so much information in here because of last year and this year we've got 144 reports, but this is really easy to sort of drill down and get into the stuff that you really want to see. This year was, each year we do these surveys, just gets better, and this year we had over 8,100 participants, in fact, 8,185 to be exact. Last year we had 77,500 in 2018. So we had 5,200 students, over 2,400 parents and guardians, and over 520 staff. And the student responses, we went up a little bit from 5,188 last year to over 5,200. And you can see that when we were using other instruments, we had a much lower response rate. And using the Youth Truth and their data and their dashboard, we're really able to get the student responses, as well as talking to our principals about administering us during the school day in one of their classes. So this has been really great. The high school dipped down just a little bit in their participation, but the elementary was increased and the middle school students increased too. Staff responses, again, a great trajectory going up, kind of dipped a little bit this year by 27 staff members, but on the whole, just increasing that staff participation and getting their voice. Now, parent and guardian, that's where I think we really shined this year. We had a 38% increase over last year, and in the graph to the right, you can see that we increased our participation at every level, elementary, middle, and high school. In fact, when I had shared this with the PTAs last fall in the participation, I think the secondary PTA presidents really wanted to get their secondary staff, secondary parents to really participate, and I think they really did a good push on that. Hopefully, maybe that'll be even better next year. So it was fantastic. Okay, so the core themes. So there's core themes that kind of go across the student, family, and staff surveys, and I've shown them right here, the engagement, culture, and relationships. All groups answer that, and then it gets a little bit more specific depending on the group that you're in. Academic and rigor, college and career readiness, and instructional methods for the students, safety and resources and facilities for the family, professional development support for staff, and those are some sort of different. So the survey is rated into themes, and so so for the highest themes this year, students at all of the levels, elementary, middle, and high school, rated relationships the highest, and that's the same as last year. And this is at the district level. So when you're looking at all the high schools at the district level, middle schools, and elementary by staff, student, and families. So for students, relationships still high. Secondary students, academic rigor is still high, similar to last year. And families at all levels rated relationships and culture the highest. Again, same as last year. And at the staff, relationships and engagement. Very consistent with our results from last year. Now, in the board report that I provided, I also gave you a huge PDF, about 100 pages, of each school's celebrations and action items that they went through with their community and came up with about 2 or 3 celebrations and 2 or 3 action items. And this is just an example of one of them where I was talking about how relationships were rated highest on the students. This is where, as an example, Loma Verde has called that out in number 2 and 3, where students are feeling strong relationships with teachers at a 2.76. And this is a 1 to 3 Likert scale. And students feel that adults at school respect the people from different backgrounds. Again, 2.76 average rating, which is really very good on a 3-point Likert scale. And then for staff, there's an example of a school calling out celebrations for staff for Lou Sutton, where they are feeling about relationships and engagement. Staff at Loma Verde overwhelmingly take pride in their work. They feel empowered to be creative. 3 out of 4 overall categories fell within the 40th and 60th percentile, and teachers' percent of positive responses increased from last year to this year. So that's just an example of how they're diving in and sort of looking at it and looking at their celebrations. Looking at the other side, at what are the themes that are rated the lowest? Again, students at all, and it's similar from year to year. Students, again, are rating culture as one of the lowest. Middle school students are rating engagement as one of the lowest. But this one is particular. This is new this year. Engagement wasn't on one of the lowest last year. High school students continue to rate college and career low. Elementary families rating resources and school safety low from last year. Secondary families, communication and feedback and resources low. And staff, professional development and culture is rated low. And I think we've heard about professional development in the past, and I think at the last board meeting, Jen talked about the professional development for next year and how they're addressing that. And here's an example from San Jose Middle School of how they're addressing communications and resources as being low, and they're really starting to target about, they want more information about expectations for communications, resources. They want to, there's concern about having necessary resources, and they're really looking at learning goals and preparing for the future. So looking at what some of the high themes are, some of the low themes are, you'll see that throughout the school's PDFs, and kind of they're capturing some of this information. And again, at Novato High, looking at their staff, they're addressing the professional development on number 2. They're recognizing that they need to, as well as the district office, the school also needs to provide some meaningful professional development. And as far as the culture is, they're looking at how they're treating each other with respect, but they know they have work to do there. So we have all this information. So in February of this year, we got all the school sites together and met at San Ramon Elementary School, and Sonia Heisters with Youth Truth walked all the groups through to kind of give them how to dive into it, how to look for their celebrations, how to look for actions, to so they can take it to the next step so they can start using this information. And there were staff, families, and they did it with students at the same time. And the results were also shared with the District Advisory Committee in January of 2019. And as you can see, we're still looking at the information. So that's on the school side. Last year when I came up here, we talked about the equity imperative and the graduate profile. So this is where we are compared this year to last year with the equity imperative. And this is on a 1 to 5 Likert scale for the staff. And while we've made some inroads, we've kind of gone up a bit with staff and a little bit with the K-5 staff and a little bit with our secondary families, 9-12 families. We've sort of dipped down or is equal, that families don't know about the equity imperative. And so we obviously have some work there to do. But as for the graduate profile, again, on the 1 to 5 Likert scale, we've shown increases across the board. And I think that's really a tribute to the graduate profile and the rubrics being integrated more into the classroom and teachers using that. And at the same time, we had posters made in English and Spanish that are throughout the district. I mean, you see them here, and they're in every classroom. So what's next? Next steps. Well, the information that you had in the PDFs, the principals met with their community, their staff, students, families, and they're integrated into their site plans for student achievement in the fall. And then as far as the equity imperative is concerned, we really see that moving forward in conjunction with the blueprint for equity in action that's going on at the secondary schools, and really integrating the equity imperative in that and kind of rolling that out district-wide. Thank you very much.
Question.
Wow, lots of information. Trustee Gila?
Okay. Thank you for sharing this.
You're welcome.
Wondering about for next year, I have a couple questions. Next year, you will be sharing also another survey with the chicks, the California Healthy the Kids survey.
Okay, so the chick survey was given in 18,
right?
In 2018. It'll be given again in 2020, and I don't know if the results will be late spring or summer. So, but I'm hearing you want to get the results from the chick survey next year.
And also, would you be able to compare and contrast that information with the local? Just something to look
I
at.
think so. I think we can show them together. The Healthy Novato Initiative, we had a retreat last Friday, and the retreat before that, and we did sort of do a data dive, and we looked at Chick Survey and Youth Truth, so we can do something similar to that.
Great, thank you. My other question was, congratulations on the response, increased response. So it's good to know that people are paying attention. Wondering about, let's see, so in a way to share some of this information that we need to share, you mentioned a couple of committees. Would DLAC, would the Latino community, would they be able to, can we share some of this information with them? Okay, great. And my other question is, can you talk a little bit more just about a couple of concerns about the secondary families that have scored low in communications? So what part of the communication, what do you mean by that? In which sense of communication? Between parents and teachers and students?
I'd have to dig into it, but my hunch is it's between parents and teachers.
Okay.
That's my hunch.
So parents and teachers, okay, great. And then also the resources in school safety. So it says that the elementary families also, again, they scored low on the resources. And so can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because I remember looking at it, and that's sort of site-specific. I think we'd have to dig into it a little bit more, but I think it had to do something specifically with the school.
All right.
I'll follow up later. Thank you.
Trustee Cooper, and then Trustee Gasson.
Thank you, Leslie, for doing this and kind of managing this. Great information, certainly a lot of it. I see a lot of commonalities between all of the schools. I see some safety issues at maybe the elementary level, and I see a lot of, I think if I were to boil it down into one issue and one way to fix it would be we need to do a better job of communicating with our parents about policies at schools, safety at schools, whatever's going on. San Ramon, I know someone made a comment about policies are not being administered fairly. Well, maybe they just don't understand what the policies are, and so that's kind of what I'm. Sinaloa parents want better communication, so I think that's important to check that off the list. I'm really surprised by the high school students rated college and career as one of the lowest themes, because a lot of what we're doing is trying to educate, and our counselors need to do, or whoever, or we need to do a better job of getting that message to them, I think. And I certainly see that mental health is, I would have expected at the high schools, is a big priority too.
Right. And I'm wondering, I think Amy's going to be coming up with the LCAP, and I think there's more funding with mental health this year under the LCAP, which is a great move. So I think getting that information out would probably be helpful.
Trustee Gasson?
So thank you for the report. I've been involved in this since we did it last year, so I think it's great. My first question is if we're able to do it next year.
As far as I know, if I recall, Sonia Heisters is on maternity leave right now. But before she went on maternity leave, she mentioned, I believe, that MCF would be continuing funding this. And also there's a meeting with all the funders and the participating districts on the 21st that I'll be attending. So I might get some more information. And then as far as the Haas Foundation is concerned, I haven't heard that they're not, and I think they're going to continue. I need to give them a report this summer, kind of capturing everything that we've been doing.
Okay, that would be great, because I like the continuity. I know that the first year, I think it was hard for people to kind of grasp and go, well, you know, the biggest thing is, well, if I do this, what's going to happen?
Right.
And I think what was great this year is that you guys pulled everybody together so they could understand and do an action plan or try to incorporate things. One of the things I'm just seeing in general, and actually I wanted to respond to Trustee Aguila's question. As a parent, the things that came up on the, you know, on both sides, on the positive and on the, I forget what the phrase is, but the ones that are lowest rated are things I'm struggling with, and I hear a lot about at the elementary and middle school level. With communication, I think it's just, I don't know where the breakdown is, but it's so hard to get information. You know, I find out a couple days before that my daughter's got a half day. So I think that you know, being in the middle of it and hearing other families feeling the same, I think communication, that's where it's coming from, is it's a real change too, from going from elementary, where you have a lot more access, to middle school, where things seem to be more cut off. You're in a bigger environment, you're not on campus, so you don't hear anything. So one of the things that I noticed in terms of, you know, this is the third kind of report that we've received about community input or perceptions and things in different areas. And one of the things that I see kind of permeating through all of them is this issue about safety and wellness. And what I was hopeful of is if we can also take all this information or things and kind of go through it when we're looking at what we're going to fund next for the bond. And I don't know if Yancey's here, but an example I wanted to take or use is that Pleasant Valley, when we sat down and looked at this last year, we came up with some solutions for the kids feeling safer. One of the things was the kids don't feel comfortable going to the bathroom because there were big gaps in it. And as it turns out, the boys' bathrooms were rusted and completely in a horrible condition. I never went in. The solution we came up with to address that through what we'd seen in the Youth True Survey was to get the stalls replaced and have privacy panels put in. And so that was something that I'm not quite sure how we ended up getting that funded, but one of the prior, Education West, Ed Trust West thing, I saw some comments in there about, you know, being afraid to use the bathroom, and, you know, I see some constant themes, and I'm thinking those are the things that maybe, you know, it's great to have new fields and all that, but if we can look at how we might solve some solutions through the things that we're getting in the feedback. Again, it's just an example with the bathrooms, but there might be some other things, not flashy stuff, but things that we can help address at the school level. And I think that was it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Superintendent Hogaboom's got a comment.
So in terms of the funding, we do have a placeholder in the LCAP, I'm sure, for this, because the Haas Foundation and the Marin Community Foundation, it was a grant. They like to get things started, but at some point we need to take that on. So we do have a placeholder in there. I mean, we're hoping to get funding for maybe a couple more years, but I do think the consistency of this is great. I think having the same results every year is really helpful to look at. You can see that our participation rate is, you know, triple or quadruple what it was before we did that. So before, everybody kind of did their own. Some people did it, some didn't. So I think we're building in a culture of reflection and seeing what's going well, what's not. And so, you know, we have that placeholder in the LCAP. And so when the Haas or Marin Community Foundation pull out, maybe in a year or two, we'll have that in there to pick that up.
Trustee Aguila and then Trustee Mack.
The reason I brought up the communication part was because some of the feedback that I've gotten is not so much from the parents to the, from the school to the teachers to the parents, but some of my friends say, well, it's also like from the teachers to the students, and then the students, the communication breaks down between students and parents, and that also goes with the like different departments, like special education or whatever, but also including with the Latino community. And so just if we can pay attention to those different gaps where the communication could break. So that's, thank you.
Trustee Mack.
Thank you, Leslie, for putting this together. I and a few other trustees, I know, Debbie, you were there, and I'm sure at San Ramon, and we started diving into this thing, and the first thing that happened to me was, oh my gosh, there's just so much here. And yeah, the site folks that were there were just giddy diving into all this stuff, but it's hard to ask the question, right? There's so much to look at. So I think this is a great source of data and a great chance for us to really understand what's going on. Some things that, well, first off, I would ask one question. Obviously, each site is doing their own review of their data. I'm wondering, is the process where they do their own review and then they sit down with the other same level, whether it's primaries or secondaries, and then compare results? Or do they really kind of stay in a bit of their own lane, looking at what's going on at just their site?
I know last year that the middle schools got together and looked at their data together.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about the elementary or the secondary or the high schools.
Right.
I don't think that, at least.
The elementaries probably didn't.
I don't know if there wasn't, I don't think anything official. I know that Pleasant Valley sort of took the lead in having having meetings with parents and teachers and coming up and reviewing all the data. And it was sort of a touched on what you saw a little bit going through everything, but then taking it to the community and saying, what do you see? What do you think we can work on? And then making a plan for the next year. Because the timing of it's kind of tricky too, because you're just getting this out. How do you implement or make changes? So we ended up not being able to do stuff until the fall.
I just think it might be an interesting exercise, at least for me, to see what each of particularly the elementaries are gleaning from this information. Mm-hmm. And you have some of that there, which is great. Mm-hmm. It'd be kind of interesting to see, what priorities, what they're doing well, what they think they could do better across campuses, and look for commonalities, but it's interesting. I think in many cases there won't be commonalities. And what does this particular community do great versus not as good? Mm-hmm. Just a thought. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to get the elementaries to compete against each other as much as I'm just trying to better understand, what we're doing well. Then the other thing, and Tom, you brought this up, college and career. Just kind of surprised that we're still struggling there. And for me, that's extremely important, especially with our budget decisions we got, where we're looking at potentially impacting that staffing. And we really need to understand where we're falling short there and get at it, because we're sending these kids off into their careers, and we cannot screw that up. And for me, that's critical. So disappointed that was rated low. I understand why it is, because there's frustration there. I'm kind of in that culture right now, with not being one of the ones complaining, but I'm surrounded by that. So I see it and I hear it. I think it would benefit us to better understand exactly what's driving that and go after that as best we can, and diving deep into this, and then trying to get it built into the LCAP. Of course, I know that's what you're thinking, but I'd like to focus on that. Then last but not least, and this is strange to me, and I just want to get your feedback. Maybe Jim, you have a thought too. If you look at slides 9 and 12, the highest and lowest, right? And it's interesting. In 9, the highest, students at all levels rated relationships as one of the highest items. Great. In slide 12, students at all levels rated culture as one of the lowest items. So I'm trying to understand, how can we have strong relationships and not strong culture? I'm just not, it doesn't add up. Any thoughts? What might be going on? Since there's such big things.
I'd have to go back and refamiliarize myself with those specific questions, but I think the relationships have to do with the student and the teacher specifically, and maybe with each other. And I think with maybe the student and the teacher, and if they feel that they're being respected. And I'm wondering if the culture is more about maybe just the feeling if they're feeling bullied or anything. I don't
Maybe
know that I don't
peer-to-peer.
know that for a fact, but I'd have to look at the culture questions.
And maybe culture's more peer-to-peer, perhaps?
That might be.
Yeah, as opposed to, okay.
Mhm.
Just something to understand, just because
Mhm.
they're kind of contradictory in my mind. You've had good relationships, you'd think you'd have a good culture, but anyway. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? All right. Thank you, Leslie,
You're
very much.
welcome.
All right, this is moving on to our big item, the LCAP, the 1920 Local Control Accountability and Accountability Plan.
Good evening. You can see I'm 15 minutes on that agenda, so that gives you an idea of what we're going for here. Just really a high-level overview. We spent time at the last meeting really giving you that executive summary of where we saw this is going. The final result does not deviate from that executive summary that we gave you, but what's taken place is behind the scenes, some working around the budget and balancing that. So just both sides of the house have kind of come together on this work. I do want to note that the LCAP that was added to the board was missing some sections. There was an error made in some of the boxes that were clicked. Because we're entering the public hearing phase, we've gone back, we've amended that, and we will be posting something on our website that has that comprehensive narrative. We do want to make it clear that as we enter this public hearing phase, that anyone can give us feedback. We email, writing, phone call. We welcome all feedback, and then we'll take that into account. We'll bring it back to you after the public hearing period is closed. It once again is open for revision as it goes to MCOE. We'll get their feedback and get this thing into the end zone.
Should we put out a notice to the public if it sounds like you're asking for like a full-on, because normally I gavel, open, and close, and it's just done here. Are you asking for a full notice to go out electronically? Okay. Okay.
I believe you do need to, with the budget as well, though, do a gavelled at this meeting as well.
It sounds like you're asking for more on top of
I believe so. I wanted to make a comment on where we are in the budget. As you know, the budget is a very lengthy process, a 6-month process, and we're trying to get.
Wait, hold on. Are we moving on to
No,
the...
I just I wanted to note.
I'm like, wait. This is how many pages do I have here and we're done? Oh my God. Okay.
It didn't work, Amy. I'm sorry. Tried to do it. No. So what I wanted to be clear was the budget numbers in the LCAP were kind of the final draft numbers, but will be updated to match 100% prior to the adoption next week. So the numbers are basically there, but due to just some timing that they will be updated to match dollar for dollar with the adopted budget for next week's meeting. So.
Thanks, Yancy. So to clarify, the state is really adamant that this is a document that reflects our community and our community's input. So the open-closed hearing just doesn't meet the threshold for what they're looking for. They do want us to post this on our website. They want us to continue to get digital feedback throughout the week, and then we'll adopt the final one after that time concludes.
All right. Board members, do you have any questions regarding, are you looking for more information? Trustee Gasson. Yeah, no, go ahead.
So for right now, though, are we commenting on this?
We're commenting on the LCAP,
Okay,
yes.
so
yeah.
I just had a, no, I know, and there was one thing, and this goes back to, and there's Yancy. I know we just talked about changing the budget already in an earlier part, but one of the things I noticed on here in your review and in some of the meetings I've gone to, I actually just lost it. It has to do with that position that we mentioned that gets going to the principals now. I think I just lost the number on it. Oh, here it is. Goal number 1, action 17, student services. That it's not being funded again.
What
It's,
page you want?
I don't even know. It's on the summary. It's the LCAP preview for adoption, executive summary. It's on 1, 2.
It's goal 1, action 17, student services. That was in the 2017-18 LCAP, but it was closed as an action item the subsequent year, and we're going to continue to have it closed in this third year.
Right. So that was an actual position, though, correct?
Correct.
So is there any way at some point to reevaluate that or understand what the financial implication is of changing that?
Yeah, and I think that's something that we're kind of continually examining as a system. That's a real comprehensive role, as you know, and we're doing our best to sort of piecemeal it with the shifts. But I think we're kind of waiting for maybe some happier budget times to reconstitute it. But it is something that we'll put in front of next year's LCAP committee as they write the next 3-year cycle and have them consider that.
Some of the things that it seems to address, as I understood it from talking with you the other day, is some of the area, bullying, the discipline, absences, things that maybe we didn't realize at the time when we were cutting that. Even if there's like an opportunity to have, I don't know if you can do a third of a person or having some kind of, I know that you're restructuring some jobs and how these things get done, but I think it would be nice to see what the implication would be to get some of those services back in. And then just wanted to say I'm excited to hear about, I guess, voices of the community, the amplifying parent, family, student engagement, and be interested to hear how that comes out, because I think that that's important, getting everybody involved and understanding what's going on. So thank you for that, and thank you for all the work on this and time.
It takes a village. And just circling back on that student services role, so the Haas Foundation has been kind enough to fund a prevention coordinator, and we see a lot of that bullying prevention being housed there for this upcoming school year, and we're going to reevaluate after the year and kind of see if that was a model that worked for us. But any other board members? Everybody's good? Is the board okay with just this brief summary of the new? Just want to make sure that we're all good on this. Move the whole LCAP, I understand, but, okay. And after we've had this sort of period of public input, we'll bring it back on the 18th for final adoption.
Yeah.
So we still do have a opportunity for feedback, and we'll get the fully comprehensive LCAP as it stands right now on the website probably tomorrow morning. All right, we're going to move on. Thank you. Thank you. We're not there yet. Yeah. But I will, yes. All right. Moving on to our 1920 preliminary general fund budget.
All right. Thank you so much. I'll wait till Nancy gets in here to give my usual huge thanks to her, but Amy was so succinct that we'll move on. So as we move into the official adoption of our 2019-2020 budget, one thing that I think is really important is that our budget is about our students. It's about the services that we are providing in educating our students. And so I always like to start with either a piece of art or, and so this is the mural that was just dedicated at Marin Oaks. It is a pretty impressive mural. Thank you, Jim. That it almost looks like their actual bricks have been broken. I had a couple people ask the maintenance department they needed to come and fix this, which is really impressive. Hi. With that, I would like to thank the real hero behind all of this hard work, Nancy Walker. Thank you for everything that you do. We really have the best in the business, so thank you on that. when we start with our budget, we always start with our mission and values, and just to focus our mission to engage, inspire, and empower all students in a rapidly changing world to realize their life goals. And so our budget is really how we plan on doing that, how we prioritize the things that we do for that mission. The budget development process is a long process, as you know. It's over a 6-month process to the adopted budget. And then, as you know, as we come here, it lasts all year until June 30th of the next year. So really, it's really an 18-month process. But, you know, we don't need to go through all the meetings we've had to discuss these, but just a couple of important items on there were the governor's budget in January. When this board took action to make $1.8 million in budget solutions, mostly reductions. And as we moved into the board approving the budget assumptions, and now we are here with the preliminary budget, and at the June 18th, we are scheduled to approve the 2019-20 budget. There are two factors that continue to put a negative pressure on our budget, and one additional factor that I wanted to bring up that we've talked about a little bit, but has been expanding in its scope, and so I did want to put that up to the surface. The first, as it continues to be, is our declining enrollment within the school district due to the declining birth rate that started right around the Great Recession in 2009. As you can see here, we're down 350 students from 2014-15. What this doesn't show is that it's actually more serious than that, as our declining enrollment is in the elementary schools, where we'll have those students for 13 years, where we are down over 600 students in the last 5 years. And so we still have a bubble moving through our middle schools and high schools before we get to our new normal in terms of individual class size, which is about 500 students per class, not in a single class, but in a grade level class. So the impact of those 350 students in terms of lower enrollment is over $3 million annually that is lost from the budget as we move forward. The second, and we've talked a lot about this as well, it continues to be the impact of state mandated pension contribution increases. I really want to focus on state mandated, as this has not been a decision of this board. This is by the state legislature and the PERS board, which has the sole authority to set pension levels and pension contribution requirements. Since 2013-14, when the STRS full funding proposal was passed and PERS has continued to go up, as you can see here, the total impact to the district in 2021, which we're almost there now, is $6 million annually to the budget. So these are $6 million more dollars we are forced to put into the retirement system that we didn't have to put into in 2013-14. That $6 million, to put it in perspective again, is 60 additional teachers across our system. That would be 15% more teachers in our system. One thing that we haven't talked about as much, but I do want to note as it continues, it is continuing to increase in scope, is the increase in special education costs, very specifically our excess costs to the Marin County Office of Education for running regionalized programs in Marin County. As you can see, since 2014-15, we've seen $1.5 million increase in that cost. The county provides regionalized programs where districts place students, and some of this $2.5 million doesn't actually represent the total cost of those to Nevada Unified due to our SELPA, which is our special education local plan area. So we combine with the rest of Marin County to in terms of funding and in providing services. Off the top, the Marin County Office of Education is allocated $5 million, of which about 24% of that comes for us. So about $1.2 million we're allocating. So truly the cost that we are paying to the Marin County Office of Education is more in the line of just shy of $4 million annually. If you take these three issues together, the declining enrollment, the increase in state mandated pension contributions, as well as the increased special education costs solely in terms of excess costs to the Marin County Office of Education, that would be in excess of a $10 million impact since 2014-15. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the budget assumptions as the board has already approved the primary budget assumptions. But I do want to note a couple things around. We have updated those for the May revise at the last meeting. I gave an update on the May revise that it was very similar to the governor's January proposal in terms of its impact to the school district. It'll be interesting. The subcommittees seem to have come at the state level, seem to come to some conclusions, which will alter the governor's May revise, but it doesn't look like in a material way to Nevada Unified's budget. One of the things to highlight is in terms of budget cuts, we cut another $1.8 million out of the 2019-20 budget. That is in addition to the $2.2 million budget, that $2.2 million in reductions that was cut out of the 2018-19 budget for a total of $4 million over 2 years. That's roughly just under 5% of our annual budget. Also, to be clear, 2020-21 and 2021-22, we noted in Budget Solutions TBD, and I'll get into why that's going to be necessary as we move forward here. Just a couple other ones. Same thing, the board has already approved the budget assumptions at an earlier meeting, but to focus on one area in red here is one-time state funding. Over the last 5 years, Governor Brown had implemented one-time funding, unrestricted state funding, and this governor has not seemed interested in that, and that was not included in any of his proposals and is not expected to be part of the final budget act. So the impact to Nevada Unified is a loss of approximately $1.3 million. Also, no one-time funding is projected in any of the out years as well. As a stark comparison year over year, 2018-19 in terms of unrestricted state funding, so this is $68 million of the roughly $88 million budget, so over 3/4 of the budget, it comes from unrestricted state funding. We will receive less funding in 2019-20 than we did in 2018-19. And that's due to obviously the declining enrollment, the COLA-only environment that we've moved into, as well as the loss of that one-time revenue that Governor Brown was so famous for, that Governor Newsom has not continued. This is the first time since 2009-10 that we will receive less state unrestricted funding than we did the year before. I wanted to just go over real quickly that one-time state funding since 2014-15. We've received no less than $500,000 in one-time funding and as much as almost $4 million in one-time funding. But to be clear, 2019-20 and beyond, we are not projecting any additional one-time unrestricted funding from the state. In March, the board approved the 2019-20 budget solutions of $1.8 million. It's important to note that at this point we've made the easiest of the reductions and the budget solutions. Not to say they were easy, but these are the easiest that we will be able to make. So each continuing year forward that we are forced to make additional budget reductions, it will get more difficult. The next 3 slides include the unrestricted general fund, the restricted general fund, and the combined general fund. I don't mean to play favorites, but the unrestricted general fund is by far the most important thing. If you're going to look at anything in our budget, look at the unrestricted general fund, because it includes our reserves that are unrestricted that we can use for any purpose. And also it includes in the line contributions, which has $11 to $13.5 million, the total impact of all of the restricted funds. So any restricted funds that we are required to contribute to, most importantly, special education and routine restricted maintenance, are listed within that contribution line. As you can see, these 3 show the 2018-19 estimated actuals. So this is our best guess at how we're going to end the 2018-19 year, as well as the preliminary budget for 19-20 and the 2 subsequent years. With the budget adoption next week, the board will be approving not only the 2019-20, but they will be approving that they believe that they can meet their financial obligations for the next 2 subsequent years. As you can see, just a couple focuses. Our LCFF sources very much slowing in terms of the increases now in a COLA-only environment. I used to hate talking about and try to explain the gap funding each year that we were getting. Now I'm kind of wishing we were back in a gap funding environment where at least they were giving us something more than the COLA. Also, you note the increases in contributions. We see continued increases to specifically special education costs as our special education population increases and the cost to serve those kids have increased, specifically at the younger level, 3 and 4-year-olds. We're seeing increased identification and increased costs at that level. And then when we look overall, I think the really important note is the net decrease to the fund balance line. 2018-19, I want to be clear, is a little misleading. It notes 2.49 million. 1 million of that is a contribution to Fund 17. So that's not strictly a deficit. That's money that we've set aside into a special reserve fund. But we're still looking at about $1.5 million in terms of deficit spending in 2018-19. The proposed budget for 19-20 includes a deficit of $1.3 million. That's up a little bit from our April numbers that we looked. It was a little over $1.1 million at that point. And then that bumps to $2 million and $2.7 million in the 2 out years if our projections hold. And those deficits will cause in 2021-22 force the district to move those funds from Fund 17, the Special Reserve Fund, to move back into the general fund in order to meet the state's 3% minimum reserve requirement. I noted the restricted, but the true impact to restricted funds does come through that contributions line in the unrestricted budget. Overall, given the overall combined budget, 2021-22 is just over that 3% required reserve from the state. The general fund the reserve is projected to be at the end of 2019-20 to be about $5.5 million. Of that, there's the 3%, which is a little under 2.7, and then an additional $2 million, and that's all that's remaining of the additional money above the 3%. We also have a little over $3 million in the Fund 17 that this board has set aside.
So that's in addition to the 5.57?
That's in addition to the 5.5. It's about $3.1 million. I think the fund balance history tells the story of where we've been and where we're going if we don't make some changes in the out years. As you can see, since 2010-11, we've seen our fund balance decline from 22% of our operating expenditures down to a projected 10%. That includes that Fund 17 Special Reserve Fund. And then in the 3 out years is projected to move to 9%, 7%, and 4%, which is just over the 3% required reserve. What it doesn't show is 2022-23, which would be under the 3% required reserve at the state level. In terms of our identified challenges moving forward, we have a structural deficit in the out years of approximately $2+ million. We have continued ongoing increases to STRS and PERS. We're hoping that 2020-21 is the last year of increases to STRS, but PERS rates continue to project to increase even in the out years. We're also slowing state LCFF funding. I noted that we're truly have moved into a COLA-only environment, and I think that's accentuated by the fact that this year COLA-only was what was added to the LCFF. And as well as the continued declining enrollment, lower projected birth weight. If our projections hold, and that is our enrollment and our staffing levels, and our staffing levels will be there in the fall, but if our enrollment continues to decline in the fall, next year is going to be a time to make potentially significant changes. A little after I got here, President Butler asked me a question at a second interim, and it was, is it time to panic? And I know she wasn't actually obviously saying, should we be panicking, but is this the time that we need to, that we have, not a lot of other options, but to take major action? And I said no at that point. But I'm going to come back to that question now, and not panicking, but this is the time where we don't have any more time. We've been spending down those budgets, hoping that our declining enrollment might slow, hoping that the state might give us some additional funds to help us out, hoping that maybe we'd get some relief from those PERS and STRS costs. Really, 2019-20 will be okay. 2020-2021, we're going to need to take action. Like I said, that could be revenue. I know we're hearing from some parcel tax polling that we'll see next week. That might mean looking at obviously closing a school, which this board has directed staff to look at in the fall if numbers continue to decline. It might look at significantly increasing class size. But I think the time of nibbling around the edges and trying to find $25,000 here, $50,000 here is likely over. And the mantra of keeping the cuts as far away from the classroom as possible is no longer going to be really possible. So you guys know the budgetary needs. I'm not going to go into too much detail on these, but we obviously have a lot of educational needs in this district. But I kind of wanted to note what kind of the next steps are going to be. When we come in back in the fall, we're going to know our enrollment. This board has taken action to do some marketing, to do some other things to potentially increase the enrollment. We're seeing some early, looks like some positive numbers on that, but you'll never hear from me until we see those kids in the seats in the fall when we get that. So when we come back in the fall, we'll have the adopted state budget, and we'll have our enrollment for this year, and we'll have our final staffing. And I likely will come with with options of how to move forward. And again, those are likely not the minor variety. Those are likely to start being the major variety. So with that, I'm happy to open it up to questions. And just from a timing standpoint, next week I will bring the budget back for adoption and ask the board to certify that the district can meet its fiscal obligations for the current and 2 subsequent years. Yes, open up to questions.
All right. Questions from the board. Trustee Gasson.
Actually, I was just going to make a statement, just to put this in context. I was trying to find it on my phone. I get Ed Week announcements, and they had a recent report about how much each school gets in each state. And in perspective, not that we can change this right now, but what their quality counts came up with was that the national average is $12,756. California gets about $10,281. And when I calculated that based on our current enrollment of 7,599 students, that was over $18 million in difference if we were just at an average, which I find is incredible. I couldn't even imagine. I even said if you took out the parcel tax or whatever and brought it down to, somewhere around $15 million in difference. I just think that is just so tremendously significant. I mean, it doesn't change that we have to do things, but in perspective, when people are saying, what are we doing? We're getting so much less money from the state.
Any additional comments from the board? It's pretty. Trustee Millerick and then Trustee Mack.
2 points. One, earlier I talked about the discussion of charging the public access studio a fee, and we are a week away from adopting a final budget. I think that's a worthwhile conversation, but I don't think we should change the budget at this point in time. I think we ought to adopt it as we proposed it, and then if we can work the issues going forward and change it, but we are still upside down in this budget, $1.3 million. And as much as I like public access studio and how they serve the community, I like teachers in classrooms and instruction, and we're not able to even fund that correctly. So I would like to have the conversation, but I do not want to have it before we adopt the budget as proposed.
Sure.
So I just, if anybody wondered where I stood on this, I just
following up with that.
Yeah, I raised the issue, and I'd like to finish making my comments here at a time when it's appropriate to talk about budget.
Okay. Trustee Mack?
I talk about this a lot, so it won't be any surprise, but recruiting, getting more students in the district. I know you mentioned that as one of the ongoing things, and we'll see how it bears fruit this fall. And I'm not sure if Leslie, there she is. Are we pretty much focusing, though, on primary, the recruiting campaign, generally speaking? I mean, is it that kind of what we're seeing mostly? And where I'm probably going to go with this, so. But.
Yeah, I think the primary focus was on your kindergarten and elementary. However, I know they've been writing blogs and putting things out on secondary as well. But next week, Brian Epperson, the CEO of Target River, will be up here and we'll do a joint presentation. I'll sort of give my end of it, of sort of anecdotal and who I've talked to, and he'll do the other side of it, the data stuff. But I think we've really been able to reach people.
Yeah, I know it's not a panacea to solve our budget problem, but it's one of the many tools we've got to help. You've heard me say this a few times, but can we formally start reaching out to the basic aid districts that are in the exact opposite situation that we're in at the secondary level? We have great programs in MSA and STEM, and actively talk to them about, maybe it's worth a bus. I don't know, but something about getting more of the students from Southern Marin that they have too many of, and getting them to go into our great programs.
It could be just sort of a marketing effort to let them know what the programs are that are available
something
here
proactive.
in Novato.
Yeah.
It's possible.
I know it happens already to a degree, as you know as well. There's word of mouth out there. I would just like to see, can we formalize it or make it proactive with those other administrations, those other sites? I know.
I don't know about other administrations.
And that's why I'm bringing it up.
That's why I said something about doing some marketing efforts, because I remember hearing someplace where some Marin School of the Arts parents were talking about, oh yeah, we got that don't live here in Novato. Well, I didn't even know about this program.
Right.
So maybe, doing something where we're reaching out to those families to let them know what the programs are here.
Right. And I want to do it in such a way that we're not pulling what our friends up north did to us do it in a very transparent way and in partnership, because we can help each other.
It might be a grassroots effort with the foundation, and because they have board members who don't all live in Novato, and that they reach to their networking people.
Correct.
Beyond, it might be more of a,
But, you know,
than a campaign from the
I mean,
district to other districts in the county.
I'm just looking to,
Yeah.
I know we've
No,
been
I understand where
kind of
you're-
touching on
yeah.
it. I think now's the time to start really looking at it, aggressively within bounds of decency and partnership with our community.
Well, it's
and
probably a
our
good,
friends down south,
I'm thinking of STEM also at
Yeah.
San Marin. I think it's probably a good conversation to get together with maybe those families who don't live here in Novato and say,
Right.
Right.
and talk
That's
to
what
them.
I'm thinking.
The parents, yes.
ROTC.
And who knows, maybe we can talk to the new superintendent down in San Rafael. And see what
Yeah.
he
Maybe.
Well, you know,
He's a loser.
I don't know if he'll be any help.
Yes. Trustee Millerick?
My concern about how we approach that is we're asking people in Novato to buy a bond measure and put a lot of debt on their homes and put a parcel tax and put more debt on their homes in order to offer these programs, MSA and STEM and ROTC. And it's a competitive program to get in. You have to compete to get into it. So now you're going to compete with some kid who lives in Terra Linda or Tam, and if you're the child who doesn't get in because a better performer or trumpet player came from out of the district, I think we're sitting on a situation that could spin this entire district out of control. I do not favor marketing outside of Novato. I think the downside, particularly because we've asked, in light of the fact that we've asked Novato residents to step in and fund those programs, I think it is a mistake. I think it is a poison pill that will bite us. So while it may be great that people find us because it's a great program, I think spending district dollars in any form at all with any kind of formal program takes us down a path that will, at some point, we will burn our own fingers and we will be in a very, very difficult situation. So I would argue against that kind of program. I would welcome those students. I think that's, if they find their own way here, just as I would welcome one of our students going into the Future Farmer program up at Petaluma High because it better suits what they want to do in life. It's a family choice question, or if a student that lived in Novato wanted to go to Marine Catholic, it's a choice. But for us to institutionalize it, I'm very nervous. So I would like, before we do any of that, have a much more detailed conversation.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. Trustee Gasson?
So just to touch on that too, maybe we look at it a different way if there's a way to increase capacity. Because I know that my girlfriend's daughter is going into 9th grade. She was able to get into Marin School of the Arts, but her friend did not. And then they learned about kids out of the area that got in. And they were like, we live in Novato, we pay our taxes, my daughter didn't get in.
What the hell's the deal?
Right. And so what I'm thinking then is then we look at capacity. If there's that much demand, how do we increase capacity to, make sure that we get both? So maybe spinning it, I guess, just looking at, because I agree, we need to have these programs so that we do attract and retain, but at the same time, is there something we can do to expand it so that more kids can come in?
I think bottom line, there's a conversation to be had here. I think we have a lot of different viewpoints to bring in on this.
Right.
Totally understand where you're coming from, but maybe that's where the foundation angle takes over. And
Right.
that way, we're not funding it, but the foundations are. But we need to talk about it. And we've not been talking about it. That's
We've
what-
also had the conversation in the past about capping capacity at
Right.
MSA intentionally.
Right. Is that something we can revisit, the capacities of those programs and?
Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
that's one area that we
ensure
have
we're
been
capturing the students?
Yeah, and that's one area that we do see an increase in students and potentially funding, but I think we need to do it in a way that has been vetted by this board. And
Sure.
so, yeah, absolutely. I think coming back next year, especially when we
Right.
move forward with that process before maybe the beginning of the year, we can do that.
Before they put out their
Exactly.
Debbie, I'd like
application
to
process and stuff. Yes.
take a little different track. First, I want to look at the, I assume that's inspired by one of Jim's ties. That slide. I mean, it seems to me, it's like something we can permanently save. Yeah, it's good, beautiful, right. I think we have an issue that's way more than finding If I just did some quick math, to raise $1 million, you need to find 83 students, bus them in. That's $12,000 per student. I don't know if that's even what we get. Maybe we get 10. That's an awful lot of students to bring in from outside. I think in the short run meaning the next 4 years, my guess is we can't bring in another 100 students. I don't know how many. Nancy, do you know how many come in from out of district to take their education in Nevada now?
Most of them are at the high school level, and we see an additional approximately 50 students each year from out of district.
Okay, so 50 a year for 4 years, so we get.
So we have 200 students from outside of the district. Yeah. That's very ballpark. Yeah, and a vast majority of those are at the high school level.
Yeah. So if we could figure out how to double, 100% increase over what we got, we'd get $2 million.
That helps. Yeah.
$2 million would help, but it's not enough to solve. I mean, that wouldn't solve all the problems. We're looking at losing $1.5 million over multiple years. I think we have to have the serious conversation about how are we going to cut costs.
Both.
Both. But we've been talking about one side of this for the last half hour. I think we need to have the conversation about the other side of the coin for a half an hour about what cost are we going to cut? What are we going to drop ROTC? Are we going to? What are we going to do about? Is there a way to bring more special ed students back here so they're served in Nevada? Are we going to drop the STEM program because we can't afford it?
The problem is we start cutting costs, and we get in that downward spiral of losing enrollment, and we got to cut more. And
right.
We're already in a downward spiral. He's been showing us the downward spiral now for multiple years.
I get
so
that.
When you're worried about the downward spiral, look at the slide.
But we start cutting programs, people leave actively, and then it's worse.
So it's a defined.
Yeah, we got to be careful.
I got it.
Yeah.
But you can't talk about cutting costs. We have to cut
I get
costs.
that. Yeah, I get
Trustee
that.
Nell, and then Trustee Gasson.
Okay, so
Bring us to order.
same subject, but I wanted to just maybe go a little more depth into the three issues that you brought up that had the largest impact on our revenue. And we'll just start with pension because that's the one that we can do the least about. But I think it's probably worthy of just mentioning it as publicly and as often as possible. And I want to thank you for actually reiterating it again and again in these documents that are public, that this is an ongoing, growing problem that the people of California are quite frankly going to have to do something about. You mentioned that as far as you know, the premium increases on pensions were going to stop in 2021. I can tell you through public and other private sources that is a ridiculous notion to think that the increases are going to stop in 2021 at levels around 22% of our payroll. They're going to continue to go up. So let's move on to see maybe what things we can talk about. You talked about special education in SELPA and the administrative fee. I think I'm describing it as the administrative fee that the county charges, because the idea behind a cooperative is we all go in together. Theoretically, we're going to be able to service the special education student in a more efficient way based on our cooperative funding and action. So you mentioned that we're like 20, I think you said 22, 23%. And so from my perspective, I just want to have some insurances or back some information. Is that a fair assumption that in a countywide situation, do we have 22% of the population? So I'm looking for numbers on an analysis of our participation in this cooperative that we're not being taken advantage of by all the other districts. And I think I've said this before. I would much prefer to be the gorilla in the room when it comes to this kind of a situation. So if you can give us some assurances that we're holding their feet to the fire on efficiencies and that there aren't other districts that are able to take advantage of this cooperative effort, but maybe what they should be paying is a larger percentage on a per student basis because they have fewer students in the program. So quite frankly, from my perspective, that means they should pay more per student until such a time they have a larger population. So maybe just cover a little bit. Is there anything we can do there?
Yeah, I think there is. To clarify, we have about 23% of the students in the county wide. And within the within the Marin County Office of Ed regionalized program, we have approximately 1/3 of the students countywide. So we have more students in the countywide programs than on a percentage basis, than our percentage of the SELPA ADA.
So, and I'm just going to have to ask that there's justifiable reason if we were to dig down into those details, we would understand why that was the case.
Yes, and it's going to be a lot of individual discussions, but they run a number of programs countywide, and we have placements all over. One of the items in the special education review was to take a deep dive into not only our non-public school placements, but our placements at the County Office of Ed, and see what programs or students would it make sense to serve in our own programs. So that's one thing that Kelly Johnson and her team has been looking, and Kelly's replacement will be working on as well.
So as part of the budget cost-cutting review systems community, this is going to be an issue we're going to focus on. Implementation of those recommendations are sort of built into your multi-year projection, and
they are
we're hoping.
But any reductions are not going to come out of the multi-year projection until they are realized, or at least reasonably assured. One item you noted about, one of our, and I take this duty very importantly as I sit on with the other business officials in the county on they call the BAC committee, which is the business committee of the SELPA. And this year, the countywide special ed directors and program side of the budget recommended several increases to programs in the current year. And the original increase, while it's $230,000 in the budget, the original proposed increase was close to $800,000. As you can see with the increases that have happened over the last couple of years, myself and several of the other business officials really took a hard line on, we need to know exactly what the savings are going to be that are going to offset these costs. Or if we're going to move forward with this, we need to be more transparent about, the decisions we're making to increase program at the countywide level, because those decisions aren't necessarily, brought to the individual boards. The superintendents are the ones who vote on that. So we take that responsibility as a check, as a business side check from the Business Advisory Committee, the BAC.
So well, you are to be commended, and your work is appreciated, because obviously we need someone representing us diligently in that area. So I'm glad to hear that that's happening. So regrettably, there may not be a whole lot of additional savings coming out of this concept, but again, special education is going to continue to have a large impact on our general fund contribution. So I hope you'll just continue to do what you said. I've got one more issue, but I should love to hear what the superintendent has to say.
Well, just to give kudos to Yancey, I serve on the operational steering committee or whatever it is. We meet before the superintendent's meeting about once a month to review all the SELPA stuff. And Yancey has done a great job of bringing these increased expenses to my attention. We brought it to the other district's attention. Yancey and I have also had a meeting with Mary Jane Burke and John Lenz, kind of voicing our concerns about these costs that we don't project, and all of a sudden they're just going through the roof. We voted down at the OSC the increases that Yancey's talking about. So kudos to you for looking at that. And again, it's not something we're anticipating. And so a lot of the TAM district, every other large district, Santa Fe, everybody's concerned about these special education costs, and somehow we've got to get a handle on it, because as you say, it's one of the key three things. When it's gone up $800,000 in 1 year, it's just incredible. So I would suggest actually that maybe in the fall you bring back some more details about it, because you've helped me to learn about it, but I think it'd be helpful for the board and kind of holding the county accountable and ourselves for where are these costs coming from and what can we do about it.
So I just will follow up, say, you know, as the elected fiduciary on this issue, I just think it's something that it's important to bring to light that in fact, the questions are being asked, staff is paying attention, and we're doing our best not to be taken advantage of based on the size of our participation in a cooperative, what I call a cooperative SELPA. So declining enrollment, you know, I look at the budget and I see we're predicting declining enrollment. That means we're going to get less money per kid. And normally the offset for fewer customers is you have, you know, fewer employees or expenses and dealing, you know, you're producing less work. So but when I look at the numbers, I see we are cutting FTE, but our classified and our certificated salaries continue to rise. And so I'm just wondering if we can't have more of an explanation for the public to understand it, why it's not a one-to-one savings. If we're going to have fewer students, we therefore should have fewer teachers. Therefore, we should have lower salaries to deal with the declining enrollment issue. Now, I understand there's factors to be considered when it comes to economy at scale and things along those lines, but what is the reason for the continued growth in salaries and benefits, even though we have fewer employees?
So there's a couple items around there. We have our annual step and column costs with those automatic increases in costs every year.
So wait, those are negotiated contract automatic raises. So it's based on the amount of years they serve, and then there's some additional columns for their level of education and professional development. But essentially, we have automatic pay increases built into all of our employees' contracts going forward. So that's part of why it continues to rise even though we have fewer employees.
Yeah, so we see about a 1.5% increase on our certificated side, and we project 2% on the classified side for increase. Certificated has step and column. Primarily classified has step and longevity costs, but they average about 1.5% to 2% a year. Those costs would be offset potentially by some retirement savings, but we're seeing employees work longer and longer. So we're not seeing those same retirement savings. The other increase.
So can I just stop you there? Because I just want to make sure people understand that you're essentially our more experienced employees with longevity. They've been here. They earn more than the ones that haven't been here as long. So if they're not retiring, I just want to make sure that
yes.
So theoretically, that's something that used to happen more often than it does now, or I would argue that's been pretty steady. So I just don't understand why that hasn't changed. So I'm still asking the question. Let me put it this way: we're in a declining enrollment environment.
Yes.
We should be adjusting for fewer students. What can we do? And I look at, so I look for, okay, well, then we're going to have fewer employees, but then I see employee costs going up, even though we have less of them. And you mentioned they're not retiring. Well, they're just because their salaries are going up. So let's talk a little bit more about what we would do to save money as a result of declining enrollment. I mean, what needs to be done there? Is that school closure? Is that administrators? I mean, what are we going to do to save money because we have fewer students to serve?
Yeah, so I think at the classified level, and you noted that you didn't see that as much, is a lot of our classified staffing is more based on, so our teacher staffing, counselor staffing is based on student contact, student to teacher ratios. And so there's a pretty one-to-one combination with a lot of our classified employees and our administrators. So say a principal at a school, an office manager at a school, those are site-based. So one school gets one principal, one office manager, one library tech, 0.5 IT support. And so in order to pull back, it's not a direct relation to we declined 20 students at that site, and so we will get rid of a 0.1 principal and a 0.1 office manager. In order to get those savings, you need to close the school to get those savings. And a lot of our costs are like that in the sense of as you're growing, you can you add the teacher and you can add infrastructure as you grow. When we lose 20 students, that's about $200,000. Well, you can say, okay, we don't need one teacher. That still leaves $100,000 of additional other costs, of energy costs, which you might not be able to, the overhead at the site, an administrator, a custodian, those kind of things. And so what you have to do there is the larger scale things of potentially looking at closing scales of schools, potentially, starting to have principals share between two sites, those kind of larger decisions.
So it's consolidation, essentially.
Yes.
If like we were to close a site, we're still going to have students in that site that there's not enough of them to say to reach to get us to that 500 per grade level. I think district-wide just said so that we would consolidate them into the remaining schools that are open, and then we'd have a lower, that water meter would be essentially turned off, the power would be turned off, there'd be a couple fewer classified administrators. Would there be any insurance costs or other kinds of expenses that could come of it?
There are costs of operating a site that's no longer being used, unless even if it's being rented out or another use, there are still going to be some costs, but there will be significant savings.
All right. So I appreciate the opportunity to ask the questions and have you answer them. So I'm speaking to the board now, but I think at some point we're going to have to get serious about directing staff to come back to us with a plan around consolidation. We don't have to consolidate. We don't have to close a school, but we do need to know what the benefits could be or would be, or what the downside
Right.
would be versus the good, the
I
positive.
think we've given that direction. I'm very clear. So, but thank you
So
for.
so I would like to, it's budget time, we're adopting a budget.
Yeah,
I want to vote
right.
to adopt a budget, but I want to have a better sense that we're going to be, we're going to stop talking about school consolidation and that we're going to actually implement a study. So that's,
Right.
thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Trustee Nell. Trustee Gasson, okay, Trustee Aguila.
Okay. I just wanted to say that earlier today, Trustee Mack mentioned he came up with an idea, and whether it was a good idea or a bad idea, that doesn't matter. But I just wanted to say thank you for just being creative, and I think that we need to, and Trustee Nell, you talk about, let's talk about savings, and so I think that we've already asked our staff and to be creative, but I want to again just say just say that we need to continue to think outside the box and continue to be creative and find a way to save and make money, and hopefully hopefully we're not sitting here hoping that that we will be able to just everything will go away if we go for a parcel tax or anything like that. I hope that we continue to be creative and so ask the community and the staff and all of us to just think outside the box. So this is really scary, and I thank you guys for all the hard work, and so this is really tough, and so I just wanted to say that.
All right. Thank you. We are in some situations that we don't want to be in, and we're working through the solutions. That's about all we can do at this point. Trustee Mack.
Be quick. Just came out, and I just forwarded it to Leslie. Marin IJ editorial today on PERS and STIRS and just pensions in general for all government. And they are very vocal saying the increases in the pensions are making it much more difficult for agencies to raise taxes or partial taxes of any kind, because more frequently people are saying, well, it's just going to pay for the pension, so I'm not going to approve it. So my point is that any thoughts that we have about doing a partial tax scare me, because I think that as long as this pension issue is not addressed, it's going to become more and more difficult for everybody to pass those measures. And I think in 2 years from now, it's going to be even worse. So where I'm going, I think, is that for us to hang our hat on that as a potential savior, I'm not there. I think it's risky. That's it.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to wrap this up. Thank you, Yancey and Nancy. Good report. I mean, very thorough. If you want to know what is happening in the district financially, read this report. It gives you all the information, and so we appreciate that, especially for the board. So thank you. And this will come back as an action item next Tuesday. Moving on to the next item, which is our 1920 budget reserves. We do this every year. Staff report.
We hit on most of these items in the last, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. In 2015, SB 858, more famously known as the reserve cap bill, actually had two arms. The first was the reserve cap, which CSBA and this board have put out things of bad policy. But the one piece of good policy was a piece of transparency policy. Every year that districts would disclose the reasons why they keep an adequate level of reserve in the district. And just really quickly, we hit on them, but it makes a lot of sense when we're deficit spending due to declining enrollment, increase in PERS and STIRS costs, restricted programs, the special education costs that continue to increase, as well as moving into a COLA-only environment for our LCFF growth, needing cash flow, in the sense of, we don't have enough reserves right now to fund 2 months of payroll. And the Government Financial Officers Association's recommendation of a 17% reserve are some of the reasons we keep a higher reserve than the minimum state level of 3%. And I think that's a very, very good thing. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Questions? No, we've had a pretty thorough discussion. Trustee Nell.
Well, I mean, everybody needs to have a savings account to fall back on, unexpected things, and also predicted things. I think we've done, Yancy, I think you've done a good job with organizing and structuring and setting up the transparency around our reserves. The sad part about it, I've sat here for years and watched them get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller as a result of deficit spending. I wish it could be higher, and I think that the way that we currently have them assigned, I'm trying to think, we have assigned, unassigned, and then I think we have one other phrase for something that's less specific, but I invite the public and our partners in running the district and so forth to take a look and to see these dollars and where we've set them aside and what they amount to. And I wish it could be more, but I don't see us socking away funds that could be used for other things like salary increases or pension assessments and things along those lines. In fact, actually, the Fund 17 that you keep referring to, in my mind, is quite frankly there to make pension payments when the time comes. I'm prepared to call it the Pension Reserve Fund, but it's designated as special. So, all right. So my comment is, I think you've done a good job on setting it up, and it's I appreciate the transparency, and I wish it could be more.
All right, this will come back. Trustee Millerick.
I think the notion that we have 2 months reserve against payroll is a bare minimum. If we were any other business and we didn't have some state legislature mandated number, we would run our business. So if something went wrong, we had a bad crop, our soybean crops didn't sell for what we thought, steel prices went up, something happened, special ed increased unpredictably, we would have reserves that allowed us to bend and flex and make it. But we're down to the point where we're going to have to deal with today's issues tomorrow morning. We don't have those reserves. And I think that we went from 24% reserves projected to head clear down to 4 based on our current model is terrifying. And if you take a straight line relationship and take it past 2 years out, it goes under the curve. We can no longer run this business by the rules we've been running it. We're going to adopt this budget in next week because this is where we are. But the assumptions that we've run this district on over the last 10 years don't apply anymore. We can't afford the programs we're delivering. We can't afford the quality of education we're delivering. We can't afford to attract students from Tam High School has funding dramatically better than we have to Novato and do it by asking Novato taxpayers to pay more and not let their kids into the programs. We can't do that. We're not a bunch of prima donnas sitting up here. We represent the community and we're running this district into the ground. We have to change the foundational premises that we run this district on. They have to be different next year. They have to be different. After next Tuesday, we adopt the budget. We have to immediately change and say, we're going to have a different kind of school district than we've had for the last 10 years. We don't have a financial choice. Otherwise, we'll have John Bernard or some other trustee come in here, and the same thing will happen here as happened in Oakland. We'll end up with, half of our students going to charter schools or Lady of Loretto or Good Shepherd, or our population won't be declining a few percent. It'll half overnight, which is what happened to Oakland. This educational community will be torn apart and Nevada will suffer. We got to do something different. This is just not working. It's been not working for 10 years. And I've been sitting here watching it not work along with all you guys. But oh my God, we can't reduce the programs because somebody from TAM won't come here, or we got it. That's not the model that we have. We have the model of we're not serving the kids in Nevada. So put on your boots and come back after we pass this budget, and then we got to wade into a very, very difficult problem. And it's not going to be, and I think you're right, Greg. I think the public is not going to say, oh, look at its pension funds. We'll bail them out by passing a higher parcel tax just for the pension funds, because that's the opposition's line. It'll be, they're not paying for my kid's education. They're paying for retirement for some teacher who worked here 20 years ago and just needs more money. We got big shoes to fill. So with that, thank you very much. I apologize. It sounds like a speech, I know, but this is desperation. We don't have 2 months of funding.
Trustee Mack.
And not to pile on the reserve issue, but so 2 months, okay, got that. But if I recall, maybe a month or two ago, we were here very actively talking about building up enough reserves so that we actually can take care of all these new buildings we're about to build. So, granted, that's a pipe dream right now, no pun intended, but it's just, we got to realize there's a whole lot more beyond just this. So, 2 months of salary, 2 months of payroll, that's bare minimum, and that is beyond scary. So, we have a lot of work to do, and I think it's going to be, and to your point, Yancy, and thank you for being very forthright and telling us it's time to be bold. And frankly, I think that's going to come down to the way this district looks in terms of how it's located on a map, to be honest. Campuses. That's where I'm coming from. But anyway.
Okay. Thank you, board members. We're going to move on this item. Thanks, Yancy.
Thank you.
All right. We're on to the public hearing. And with 2 items of a public hearing, I will open the public hearing. If anybody would like to speak on the public hearings, just come up to the podium. Would appreciate filling out a blue card if you are going to be coming to speak. So I will open the public hearing for the 2019-20 Local Control and Accountability Plan, otherwise known as the LCAP. I don't have any blue cards, and I don't see anybody coming forward, so I will close that public hearing. As it was stated, we are still collecting feedback from the community and everybody, so please provide that electronically to the district office. Moving on to the second public hearing, this is the 2019-2020 preliminary general budget, I'm going to open the public hearing. And seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. All right. Moving on to our one discussion action item. With Jen Larson, she's going to present the middle school social studies instructional materials adoption.
Good evening. My name is Jen Larson, Director of Instruction, and I'm here tonight with our wonderful teacher who was willing to come at this late hour to support the social studies work that our team has been doing. Yvonne East Jensen is a middle school teacher at Sinaloa Middle School and is going to join me up here in just a moment to talk about the process that we went through. So tonight we're here to talk about the History Social Studies Framework. As you guys know and have been hearing reports on for the last 2 years, we've had a change in framework since 2016, and then we had the adoption of the state materials in 2017. Since then and throughout that process, NUSD has been very well engaged in updating not only our curriculum and our instructional strategies within the classroom, but also in looking at instructional materials. The last time NUSD adopted instructional materials was 13 years ago, and so we are somewhat overdue in our grades 6 through 8 band in terms of instructional materials and resources. We came together a year and a half ago to start looking at not just the materials, but more importantly, what is it that we're looking for in adoption criteria? Obviously, NUSD has priorities that are very similar to the state, but also have some above and beyond. For example, we have our one-to-world technology rollout. We want to make sure that technology is integrated within any adoption that we look at. More than anything, we're making sure that the instructional materials or the technology components are enhancing instruction, not just replacing it. So one of the pieces we really looked at is ensuring we aren't just looking for an online textbook. We have a textbook. What we're looking for is something that provides us resources that our teachers and our students have never had access to before. Our connection to project-based learning, making sure that students are engaged in curriculum that leads them into the high school PBLs and enriched environments, both AP and our core classes. And then last but not least, making sure that all of our 6 C's are addressed throughout the curriculum adoption. Throughout the process, we narrowed down our search to begin with 4 pilots. We looked at 4 different resources, and of those 4, a team of 12 teachers came together and looked very closely at all of the materials using that rubric that we developed with those criterias. From there, we narrowed down our search to 2, and those 12 teachers implemented those 2 pilot curriculums or instructional materials for a minimum of 8 weeks. The 2 that we piloted were National Geographic, which was provided by Cengage, and then we also looked at McGraw-Hill's Impact, which is a hybrid text and online set of materials. As you can see here, throughout the process we gained teacher feedback, but also student feedback, which is a part of the process we've never included before. And so it was engaging students to be able to say, how did this feel? Did it feel any different? Was the technology helpful or was it a hindrance? How did it work for you? What did you like? What didn't you like? And so we're going to share some of those results with you tonight. Up here you can just kind of see the breakdown. There's our 12 responses. So you can see Sinaloa had 50%, San Jose was just there at 41.7, and then Hamilton is 8.3, which is representative of ensuring that we have all grade levels, all schools represented. And then our grade breakdown is a third, a third, and a third. We had 2 teachers at each grade level to make sure that all of the materials were piloted equally. As you can see, we had nearly unanimous response to McGraw-Hill's Impact. 90.9%, with 1 teacher saying that they would prefer not to adopt at this time, but they'd like to look at outside resources or maybe look outside of the state adopted list. Based on this feedback, we've moved forward with a recommendation to adopt McGraw-Hill's Impact. You have a much more extensive list of feedback in your results there, and absolutely have access to all of the feedback that the teachers responded with if you would like to look at that. But some of the highlights that were really mirrored throughout the feedback that we received was around one piece, and this showed up actually both in student and staff, something called the Sync Blast. And I'm going to go ahead and have Yvonne come up here, and she's going to talk a little bit about what the teachers felt about this program.
So thank you once again. I'm Yvonne East Jensen. I'm at Sinaloa, and I'm here actually to talk about McGraw-Hill's impact. So after a couple months of piloting this, we kind of all came to the conclusion that impact probably deserved to be adopted based on numerous factors. Some of them are up here, some of them are in your folders. The first one, though, is probably the flexibility that Impact provided that is customizable to the multiple resources that are provided. Some of the options are either in print, you can do digital, you can do inquiry, or even project-based choices. You can also choose to use any of these options interchangeably based on the specific needs of your students. That means that at some point in time, you could maybe do an inquiry based, and then the next section you may do a combination of inquiry and digital, or you can even choose one completely that is project based. So it's all, what your needs are for your students and what you are comfortable with at that time. All of these options allow a teacher to differentiate the instruction with 21st century capabilities: audio support, media selections, digital assessments, customizable resources, including dropped reading levels based on Lexile, which means if you've got something and you have somebody who's reading a third grade level, they drop it down so it's accessible for them, which is incredibly helpful. Additionally, the program actually integrates history, social studies, and the ELA standards with reading and writing strategies. It provides a multitude of primary and secondary sources while promoting global perspectives. Each section begins with an essential question, which supports the inquiry basis and promotes critical thinking in the classroom. Additionally, all of this is provided in Spanish for our ELL students. And finally, I'm just going to go back to Sync Blast because that seems to be the favorite of all the students. What it does is it actually provides a debatable current events and historical readings in a really very engaging and social media-like format that are constantly being updated. And so therefore, that's actually kind of the three main reasons that we really kind of focused in on McGraw-Hill, and why we feel, the teachers basically feel that McGraw-Hill Impact basically meets the diverse needs of our students. So thank you.
Thank you very, very much. One of the key pieces that really came up over and over again is having access to materials in multiple reading levels and multiple languages. That is something we've struggled with a number of our adoptions, but also really strongly with our primary resources. In social studies especially, historical texts are often very high level or use historical terminology that isn't modern day terminology that our students understand. So being able to have access to that in a multitude of different lexiles, different reading levels, being able to have that in home language is really helpful in supporting our students and our teachers' ability to differentiate as needed. So here you can see we had 498 responses from our students. So we had some fantastic feedback. I pulled out some of the ones that were a little bit more descriptive. We did have a lot of yeses and nos. So I tried to give you a little bit that summarized some of the aspects that the students pulled out as positive feedback for this program. One of the questions that we asked was, how did the program's textbook compare to History Alive? And as you can see, 51% said that it was a big improvement, 22% said it's about the same, and then 26% said the old ones were just as good. So you can see that we have kind of some differentiated supports there, and part of that had to do with the percentage of students who actually didn't use. We had 2 classes that didn't end up using the technology fully because not all of the 8th graders had access to day-to-day technology yet. Keep in mind that next year is the first year that all students 6 through 8 will have devices. And then again, you see Sync Blast pop up here a lot, the technology tools. One of the other pieces that we haven't talked about yet is it actually mirrors quite a few of the resources that they can use in CASP. So being able to annotate, being able to highlight text, things that we can give students practice on within their day-to-day programming that mirrors the kinds of tools that they'll have access to when they're being assessed later on. And then again, that interactivity. One of the pieces that we heard students talk about a lot is that not only were they allowed to interact digitally, but they were able to interact with one another. So when they were asked to be given, they were given a prompt and they could respond, that they could actually respond back and forth with one another, which is a tool that we use a lot in the schools to engage students in book clubs. But to be able to do this around historical text and primary sources was something new for the classroom. So with that, I want to ask for any questions around this. And just to remind, I just want to also kind of the actual adoption or what we're going to be requesting is similar to what we did in world language. Now that we do have one-to-one, we want to make sure that we are really using that to our benefit. So we would be asking for an 8-year subscription for all students 6 through 8 that's digital with a classroom set for each class. So each teacher would have one set of 35 books that stay in their classroom. Obviously, students who need access to a text would be able to take those home, but for the most part, the access would be digital once they left the school.
Board members, Trustee Mack, Gasson, and then Aguila. Oh, everybody.
Oh, where'd he go?
Russ left. He mentioned it to me earlier that he would be leaving.
It's like, wow.
Got an
Beat
early
him.
day tomorrow. And so.
I beat him to it. Anyway, so obviously all the focus on costs, I have to ask, right, how much this program costs?
So for the 8-year subscription, it would be $278,000, so close to $280,000.
Okay, and that covers our entire middle school population?
That covers everyone, including special ed. We've included resources for there to be at least small sets in our special ed classrooms to ensure that our resource teachers also have access to the materials.
And then the next question would be, how, are we getting a benefit of technology reducing that cost? How's that relative to in the past when we had to give every kid a book?
The difference in cost is that we're not purchasing a book for every student.
Right.
And so just that in materials. In addition, we're not repurchasing workbooks and online, or pardon me, paper and pencil resources that we've had to do in the past.
So ballpark in the past, it would have been, instead of 280?
I could get that for you. I could
Just
go
order
back
of
and look.
magnitude, it'd be over $1 million, or you think?
Oh, no, I don't think it would be over $1 million. I will say that what we had anticipated earlier in the year when I was throwing out my timeline, I want to say I had 800,000 on there.
Okay, I mean, that sounds about right. When
I think an
you're
elementary
talking about-
adoption is definitely
Yeah.
$1 million.
An elementary adoption is definitely going to be closer to $1 million. And I will say that the high school at this point has decided that they are not interested per se in a full textbook adoption like this, but online resources. And so they're actually piloting some of those. So I don't anticipate a great deal of cost coming from the high school level. Elementary school is going to be focusing on science next. And just to prepare you, as we did a few months ago in my kind of timeline over all of our curriculum, science for elementary will be a little more costly because of the equipment and the materials that goes along with that, but probably less so on the instructional materials text side.
With all that said, if I could make a request, I don't know if it's feasible, but I mean, I'll let the agenda planners say what they think, but I think it'd be very valuable for us to understand the economies of scale we're generating by going electronic, away from books, just to show how much we've saved the district in cost. I think it's valuable to have for the public. It helps us with everything else we're doing and talking about, and it justifies the cost of the machines.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
A lot of books get taken, out of, disposed
lot of
of,
books get
or
disposed
and
of.
we got to pay to do that.
all of that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just one little thing. Okay,
Then-
so you can put something together.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, happy to.
Okay, everybody had something. So Trustee Gasson.
So thank you. And actually on here, one of the things is there's every year something comes out new. I lost track of it, but I caught that. So there's that aspect too, that instead of the textbook that gets ancient, there's like it said every year you get.
So we actually had quite a bit of discussion around where to put the weight of our decision in this recommendation. Because this is new, and it's new in terms of the new framework, it's also new in terms of what technology can do in a history format, which is a textbook is in print and you're stuck with what it is right now. And so there's not a whole lot that's going to change if we buy that book for the next 8 years, as opposed to something that is digital that will be changing over time. So we will get the benefit of all of those updates for the next 8 years. So when the framework changes, when we have new information, when there's new events that are happening worldwide, we will have the day-to-day updates of those, including when technology changes, when we can move to Google single sign-on, when we can change password logins, when we can see things, interactive maps get better and integrate with Google Maps. All of those kinds of pieces, we will benefit from those upgrades at no additional cost in the future.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I think that's great. So thank you for the information, and it's interesting for me. This is all new to me, but especially highlighting I have the fortune to have Miss Jensen for my daughter's teacher, and I asked her today, I go, how did you like this? So I got firsthand feedback on this, so this is great. The two things that I think were important, I'd like to just reiterate, given all the different things we've had the last couple of weeks, is about the drop-down level for reading.
Yes.
I think that's fabulous, because trying to reach and make sure that we keep those kids engaged, that's incredible.
Yep.
And also the Spanish, I think that's great. Both of those are included in that. My one question, kind of like you're going with us talking about budgeting and everything. So once we purchase, this is the actual, I was trying to find out if there's any training or anything included in this.
Great question. There will be professional development, and once we have decided on the program and that's been approved, we'll move forward. The teachers will have some input in that. But yes, there is training that is included in this. If there is an additional training cost, we would include that in professional development days that we already have scheduled to the best of our ability.
Okay, so the 278 or whatever has training for the teachers rolled in there somewhere?
Yes, their introductory training. Yeah.
Thank you.
Trustee Nell?
I'll just say that I take a minute to thank you and your staff, the teachers who piloted this. I have a lot of respect for the professionals that you all are when it comes time to picking curriculum. It certainly isn't my expertise. I'm more of an operations financial person. So I just wanted to thank you guys. It sounds like you struck the right balance here with technology and the things you talked about, the sync blast, the differentiation capabilities. Unfortunately, I think with subscriptions versus the cost of textbooks, they do update, but the formula essentially is going to be those subscriptions are going to end up costing as much as any textbook ever did. That's the formula, so brace for it. But overall, I think some appreciation should be spoken for the teachers who worked on the pilot and put their energy and conscientious effort into trying to come up with the best program for us. And so I really appreciate it and the work you guys are doing.
And I would like to commend the teachers who participated in this pilot. Some were on the leadership team and have been participating in this all the way along, but a large group volunteered to put everything on hold and focus on this for 2 months. And as you know, writing curriculum is a lengthy process as it is, but when you're trying to learn a new program with new technology in a format the students have never used, it takes an incredible amount of patience and persistence and dedication. So I appreciate all of you. Yeah. So I'm going to repeat that over the mic so that everyone can hear that. The appreciation for the students and the families, because it just as kind of interrupting as it is for staff, it is that for the students and families who are trying to learn and stick with what they're doing, trying to use a new tool, and being willing to give feedback. To have 500 students give their honest feedback, and some of it was incredibly well thought out, reflective, and articulate. So I was very proud of our students, our staff, and to be a part of that team. Thank you.
Trustee Cooper and then Trustee Gila.
I just wanted to say thank you very much for your work and everybody's work on this. My main question was around the cost, and now that I understand that, I think I'm fine. And so at the end of 8 years, we just renegotiate if we want to keep with them or go to National Geographic or whatever at that time.
Yes, so at the end of 8 years, we'll see where we are. We may be slated for a new standards
Who
or
knows,
framework at that time, who knows? But we will see where we are and either reissue this or we will find something new.
Great, thanks.
Trustee Gila?
Yeah. I have 3 quick questions. One is, I missed the part about it has to be 8 years.
So we have the greatest
Can it be-
cost benefit if we go for 8 years.
Okay, good.
So
Okay, that's
we
what I
can
thought.
go year to year if we
Okay.
choose to, but we accrue a larger cost
That
over
was my
time.
question, because I was hoping like, well, can we do shorter and save some money? But okay, so it's the opposite. We would do longer. Yeah. Okay. My second question was, you talked about, like, it seems like all the teachers are in favor of it, and there was one that wasn't. Can you give back the feedback?
And I do want to say there was definitely some teachers who felt strongly around the textbook that we currently have. So what we have now is History Alive, and we didn't actually end up looking at it seriously because they didn't have a tech tool, and so. There were teachers who felt like they really wanted to be able to continue with some of the simulations, some of the artifacts, some of the tools that History Alive offers. But those are things that we already have and already own. At no point would we be taking those away from the classrooms. But in order for us to consider it for an adoption right now, we really did set the criteria that we needed a technology tool. So there was definitely that, especially that one that you saw there, was reflective of a feeling that if there was something else out there that we don't know about yet, we would love to be able to hear it, but not so much that we wouldn't be prepared to adopt this now.
So that was the only negative feedback.
Yes.
Nothing else.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that in a dream world, we would have had this textbook with this online tool, with these simulations, and if we could have done that, that would have been magical. But I think this came the closest to meeting all of our needs, and I'm looking to Yvonne to, okay.
Okay, and my third question is more of a process question. So correct me if I'm wrong. So now we're getting more into the computers. So now there can be a dialogue back and forth. And I think this is wonderful. So it's not just like, like in our times where we can write a report and only the teacher sees it.
Right.
This is more like now I've said this before, like now people in Japan can go ahead and see what the student here is reading, and they can get feedback from this.
Probably not in Japan unless the teacher sets that up, but now they certainly can do that within their class and possibly within their school if the teacher set it up that way. But yes, there is a possibility to share worldwide.
Who would be the audience?
In the audience for this, it would be
the other end.
In this case, it would be online conversations with their classmates.
So it's just within the classmates.
Yes.
Okay.
They can engage in larger conversations online, but through protected setup through the teacher.
Okay. Yeah. And so with that, the actual question is, so it's the process questions. I know that it's history. We should go by facts. Sometimes we tend to, there's different sides, but we should go by facts. And so and it should be the teacher, but I just want to make sure that it is so what happens in the process, or if a student receives false information or gets deviated a little bit, so at the end it's the teacher that's supposed to make sure that, because now that you're going online and you're going out there and students have access to false information, true information. So how will the student be able to understand that?
So all of the materials that would be provided through this, the teachers have access to in advance and would be able to prepare for those conversations. What I think you're referring to is when the students are reading in the subject area of a given topic, but they could be reading all kinds of sources from all over the world. And so part of that is that is part of our digital citizenship, and a lot of that falls within our social studies classrooms because they talk so much about multiple perspectives. And so while they are certainly being offered factual information, there's also a lot of opportunities, as Ms. East Jensen talked about, around debate, which is different people see different events through different lenses, and how do we have conversations, and how do we ask questions, and how do we ensure that when we're looking at resources, they're credible resources. And that piece of it is really embedded in every subject now that we have the devices, because the students are, especially starting in 5th grade and moving on, engaged in how do I know that what I'm looking at is credible information and something that I want to value or question. Yeah.
All right, Trustee Gasson?
Question, since it came up in the dialogue about the teachers that the current program or curriculum, is there an opportunity if there's pieces that they can use? I know, like when we implemented Lucy Calkins, that it doesn't cover everything for the teachers, that there were things that they liked, or there's the phonics, I think, or whatever. So is this something that if those
Absolutely.
teachers chose, they could take certain elements and kind of do like a combination, because you would still have the books?
Absolutely. They will have all of the physical resources. Some of the teachers at some of the schools, and this was not a centralized adoption. The books were adopted and provided, but some of the teachers at some of the schools have actually online accounts where it is just a digital textbook and a tool for them to be able to organize their information. They won't have that typically anymore unless they choose to pay for it themselves, but they will have all of the physical resources. And the part of the curriculum that they seem to be most they are most interested in holding on to, we call them the simulations. So one of the things our old program provided, and quite a few programs provide, are opportunities where you set up a scenario from historical, some historical perspective, and the kids walk through it in those parts. And so they will continue to have those and be able to use those simulations or any other simulations from other publishers that they may be using. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, that wraps this item up. Thank you, Jen. I know it's a discussion action item. We'll take action here. Very thorough process, so very much appreciative. And thank you, Yvonne, thank you very much for your participation. And obviously the student voice had a big effect on this as well. So, it's very inclusive, and I appreciate that. All right, this is an action item.
I will move staff's recommendation.
Okay. We have a first by Trustee Nell, a second by Trustee Aguila. All those in favor? 6-0, 1 absent.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Yvonne.
All right, that concludes our meeting this evening. Just to circle back around, we were kind of talking about Marin Oaks graduation. It is on Thursday at 6 o'clock. You can make that, okay. Yes, and I know Trustee Gasson, it was not good for you. So if anybody else wants to go to that, that would be, yeah, yes. Okay, I'll ask Ross. Next Tuesday, we're back here as our regular board meeting, our last board meeting of the school year. Closed session will be at 6:30, not 6 o'clock, 6:30, and open session will begin at 7. This meeting is adjourned.